So first of all, let me introduce myself to you. I'm Sue Thompson. I'm a major donor fundraiser and a farm discovery coordinator in the North East, and I'll be chairing the webinar today. I was told by one of our expert speakers that I couldn't have picked a worse time to be holding a webinar for farmers. So for those of you who've given up an hour of your day, I am very grateful, and all of us are extremely pleased to welcome you here. Those who are out still on combines and harvesting, we will be recording this webinar. The recording will appear on our website and on our YouTube channel in the next week or so, and we may add some supplementary notes or questions that come through as well. Now, we all wish to avoid a spike in the transmission rates of COVID-19 to protect ourselves, our families and businesses from exposure. Some of you will feel anxious about this and feel that you don't want to host farm visits at the moment, and we do really respect those feelings. However, today, what our aim is to leave you feeling a little better informed about the guidelines in the education world, to understand some of the issues that are facing teachers and their children on their return to school this week. And we hope that we can give you an idea of how much support there is for you and how we can support you through this, that you'll be reassured by the health and safety protocols that we're putting in place, and that once you have heard all of this, you may have the confidence to once again open your gates to those children who at this time have probably never needed our programmes more. So there's going to be a format for this morning, and we're going to show that slide now. There are a variety of speakers, and we've given some approximate timings for you. We aim to have the webinar concluded within the space of the next hour, and there are 2 points at which we will have some question and answers. About 40 minutes in, we'll have a 5-minute break then, and at the end. If you could now communicate any questions through the Q&A box that you will see if you hold your cursor over the bottom of your screen, and those questions are being monitored by our administrative support, and they may choose to bulk some questions of a similar theme together. If you have questions after the webinar, please do consult with your coordinator, and we will also have a central inquiries email address that you can contact us through, and I'll show you that address on a slide at the very end of the webinar. So panellists, please remain muted. I'll let you know when it's your turn to speak. And for those who are listening, there may be a slight delay as we transfer between people. So first of all, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jill Attenborough. Jill is the CEO of the Country Trust, and she's going to give you an insight into what we've been doing over the last 6 months during lockdown. So now over to Jill. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. I'm Jill, I'm Chief Executive of the Country Trust, and I'm so pleased to be here as part of what I think is our largest ever gathering of farmer hosts. Thank you so much for making the time to join us. Now, our mission is to help children learn, grow and thrive through transformative, inspirational, hands-on experiences of food, farming and countryside. And if we ever needed a reminder that farm visits are absolutely central to achieving our mission, then COVID has given us that. Across all 3 of our programmes, so our farm discovery, our food discovery and our residential programme, nearly 14,000 children have missed out on a visit to a real working farm this summer. You know that the children we work with have limited opportunities in life. Some of us have had a glimpse during lockdown of what it means to have limited access to green space, to social and cultural opportunities, to friends and family, to food, even to feel some uncertainty and anxiety. But for many children, that's a daily reality, and they've had a tougher time during lockdown as well. But there have been some shafts of sunlight. Some teachers have done amazing things with video content that some farms have been able to provide instead of a visit taking place. We've been able to support some of our food discovery schools to enable them to keep growing vegetables, both with the children of key workers coming into school and children at home too. Bernardo's foster families and also young carers were due to come out on visits over the summer with us. We've been able to develop and deliver hundreds of growing and activity packs for them. So some good stuff going on. But perhaps our biggest piece of news is that we've developed a whole new programme called Farm in a Box. It's farm-centred, but designed to be delivered in school, and it's to enable children to make connections between their lives and farming. You're going to hear much more about this later in the webinar, so I'll say no more at this point. We've also been really busy on the policy front too. Some of you have raised concerns with us about the future of educational access payments. So we've been pushing really hard for educational access to be defined and funded as a standalone public good through the Agriculture Bill and through EMS. And Lord Curry tabled an amendment for us in the Lords, which was really well received. And we're now pushing Lord Gardner to follow through on his assertion that educational access is indeed vital and will be catered for in ELMS. We've got a great crowd of people supporting that call to action, including the CLA, the Soil Association, Sustain, LEAF, and lots of others. And if you want to support that call as well, then we've done a template letter for you to send to your MP, and that's our website in the Speak Up area. And Claudia is going to post the link to that in the chat area of this webinar, and we'll send it on afterwards as well. But look for the Speak Up area on our website. So we're doing all we can on this one. It's so important. We've also submitted evidence to 2 COVID-19 select committees on food and education, and we've been banging the drum for the importance of food farming and countryside education as part of building a more resilient society. We're also keeping pace with the Environment Bill, with the National Food Strategy, and we're supporting the Wellbeing of Future Generations Bill as well. So lots going on. And if this is your kind of thing, then do keep in touch with us and watch for the latest news on our website as well. And in the midst of COVID-19, we haven't forgotten about climate change either. And we were really thrilled to be awarded a grant to enable us to develop a programme of 20 climate change themed farm visits. We want children to find out and experience firsthand that climate change is real, that it's happening here and now, and also to find out what farmers are doing to reduce emissions, to lock up carbon, and to make us more resilient. I don't know if you know the farmer and writer, the American farmer and writer Wendell Berry, but he said eating is fundamentally an agricultural act. How we eat determines to a considerable extent how the world is used. So we want children to discover that they're participants in the story of food production and climate change. Now we're really excited to be welcoming the first children back onto farms next week. Quarry Farm in Yorkshire is the first destination. And we know that with your help, we've got so much to offer children through our Farm Discovery programme. I wanted to read you an email that I had from a teacher last week. We're a primary school with over half our children eligible for free school meals, and I'd be very interested to receive more details about farm trips. We've recently discussed the desperate need to get our children out in the world to help extend their environment and support their learning. Some of you may have met the amazing Professor Mick Waters, excuse me, at our farmer teacher workshops last year. He explains how important it is for children with limited opportunities to encounter what he calls irresistible learning. You all do an incredible job of creating an endless supply of irresistible learning on your farm. Now, the coming weeks and months are going to be a little bit different, but with your help, we have a tremendous opportunity to make a really positive difference to children who have so much potential. Thank you for your generosity, and thank you for the warmth of welcome that you offer the Country Trust and children on your farm. And I really hope you enjoy the rest of the webinar.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jill. As Jill mentioned, many organisations are supportive of the Country Trust, including them, the CLA. It's a great pleasure to be able to present now their president, Mr. Mark Bridgeman, who would have been with us today, but he has another CLA event to do as well. But he has kindly pre-recorded this presentation for us. If you have questions for Mark, it would be a great pleasure to forward them on to him, and I'm sure he'll respond to you in the fullness of time. So now we're going to play a video from Mark Bridgeman. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Bridgeman. I am a farmer in Northumberland and president of the CLA. The CLA were very supportive of the work of the Country Trust. In fact, we've been working with them on a number of initiatives recently. I'd encourage any farmers or land managers who are interested in their work to find out more about it and get involved. My wife and I were due to host our first school visit in May. Sadly, it's been delayed because of COVID, but we're very much looking forward to getting involved. I think COVID has really highlighted how important this work is. Whether it's where our food comes from, we all remember back to those empty shelves, and understanding the provenance of our food, how it gets from the field to the farm to the supermarket and ultimately onto people's plates. Also, the job opportunities, getting children out onto farms to understand the fantastic opportunities in this sector, I think is really important. And finally, of course, understanding and respecting the countryside. COVID has got so many people out into the countryside, which is fantastic, and that's had lots of very positive factors, but it's also had some negative ones. And so really understanding how to respect those that live and work in the countryside, as epitomised by the Countryside Code, I think is something that we can really get across to children at those early stages when they come out to visit. At the CLA, we've been working on a number of these areas, whether it's working with DEFRA on the future agricultural policy and how this type of education work and improved access can be embedded into their future ELM scheme, the payment for public goods, and this is clearly a public good, or whether it's working and contacting the Department of Education of how important it is to get the Countryside Code built into some part of the curriculum. So finally, thank you for listening to this. I think the Countryside Trust are doing fantastic work, and I'd really encourage you to get involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mark Bridgeman. Now, we're all very anxious about the impact of COVID-19 on our health, our personal lives, and on the wider society. To reduce the risk of transmission during a farm visit, we have carefully planned our approach to health and safety. I'm now going to show you an information video that's been created by David Thompson, our Health and Safety Manager. David is actually here live today on our panel, and he'll be available to answer some questions later. In a moment, I'm going to play the video of David, but while that's coming online, may I just say that David has worked extremely hard to create an overarching framework. If you have questions that apply to your specific setting, they may be better addressed to your coordinator. But we'll be monitoring your questions now, and we look forward to talking to David in about 15 minutes. So thank you. We'll now play the video of David.
Hello, this is David Thompson, a Northumbrian farmer and a long-standing host for the Country Trust and our Health and Safety Manager. Hi David, today we're going to talk about some of the health and safety issues regarding farm visits. So a lot of people have been asking, are we actually going to do farm visits this term?
We're keen to run farm visits this autumn, but obviously we've got COVID-19 to consider. The Country Trust takes health and safety very seriously, and we won't run visits unless we're happy that the risk to farmers, to school children and staff, and to the Country Trust coordinator is acceptable. There will be a pre-visit before the date of the actual visit, and the Country Trust coordinator will organise the date and the time for that. And this will be an opportunity for the school staff and the coordinator and the farm to meet at the farm and discuss how that particular school have interpreted the government guidelines and what protocols they have in terms of health and safety, distancing and so on with regard to outdoor education events. Each activity included in a typical visit to that farm, they'll have to go through that and see how distancing, for example, can be incorporated into that. There may be extra actions that the farmer needs to take by way of health and safety, and they'll have to be noted and added to the host farm risk assessment, and the Country Trust coordinator can support with that.
The advice from the government, their catchphrase, is hands, face, space. So can we start with hand washing, and what are our policies and procedures on that at the moment?
Hand washing before lunch and before boarding the coach at the end of the visit has always been something that we do on Country Trust visits. And that protects children from zoonoses and other pathogens on the farm. And this is especially important now that COVID-19's come along. Hands need to be washed in preferably warm running water, liquid soap and paper towels. And a Country Trust coordinator can set up a temporary hand wash station if necessary, or if an extra hand wash is if it is needed. Alcohol gel can't be a substitute for a soap and water hand wash.
Advise wearing masks during a farm visit.
And this is something that should be discussed and decided in the pre-visit, because some activities included in the farm visit will be in an enclosed space and they might need masks, and whereas others out in the middle of a field they may not need them.
So David, when it comes to social distancing, is it up to the farmer to make sure that the children stay apart?
No, and on every farm visit that the Country Trust have run, the school staff are responsible for the control and the supervision and the behaviour of the children. And also now, in COVID-19 times, they're responsible for the social distancing. And you might think of the visit as having three groups of people, three entities. There's the school bubble with the group of children and the adults. There's the farmer and there's the coordinator. And you need to think about distancing between those three entities.
From a general hygiene point of view, there might be some resources or pieces of equipment that we use on a visit. Who will be responsible for cleaning them?
I think if the equipment's provided by the farm, our guide would be for the farm to wipe it down before the visit, disinfect it with sanitizing spray and a disposable cloth, which obviously goes in the bin when that's done. If it's provided later, if the Country Trust coordinator brings equipment on, then they'll do that. They'll do that with sanitize the equipment. Yeah.
Thinking about lunch times, what kind of arrangements are we putting in place?
The farmer and the Country Trust coordinator need to be happy that they can achieve social distancing through the lunch. If there are any tables and chairs provided by the farm, they need to be sanitised before the visit, and it again needs to be agreed at the pre-visit who's going to sanitise them once the children from the school have finished using them. And any rubbish or wrappers or anything that the school bring need to be taken away by the school at the end. We need to review which toilets the schools have had access to in the past on past visits, and decide whether that's okay to use those now in the present situation. Bearing in mind that the school need exclusive use of the toilets on the day of the visit, and that they need to be cleaned down before and after the school have used them. If it's not possible to use the toilets that they've used in the past, there might be an alternative on the farm or even near the farm where there might be a public toilet or something. If that's not available, it could be possible for the Country Trust to hire portaloos. If they did, it would be a good thing to have several visits in a short space of time to spread the cost of the portaloos across a few visits. If anyone from the school or the farm develops symptoms, they should let the Country Trust coordinator know straight away and they'll cancel the visit. If the Country Trust coordinator develops symptoms, there's a chance that someone else could stand in from the Country Trust and run the visit. They should contact the Country Trust coordinator, and if the answer isn't obvious, or if they need to do some research into the answer, they'll pass it back to me and we'll get it sorted.
Thank you, and a lovely shot of David's cows at the end there. So we've all seen this week that the guidance changes quickly and with very little notice. So I'm going to hand over in a moment to Mary Hext. She's the Farm Discovery Coordinator Manager at the Country Trust. She's going to provide us with a brief overview of what the current guidance is from the Department of Education and their position at the moment on educational visits outside of school. For the purposes of those who might watch this later, this guidance is correct as of the morning of the 10th of September 2020, because who knows what might happen. So I'd now like to hand over to Mary, and again, in about 5 or 10 minutes, we'll be doing some questions.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you very, very much for coming. I am really, really proud to manage the team of coordinators that we've got around the UK. They do work with yourselves. We're so grateful to yourselves for delivering the hundreds of visits to thousands of children across the country. So thank you. For those that don't know me, I also deliver visits in North Wales and in the Northwest. So I am very aware of what goes on the ground. And I have been watching with interest what's been happening over the last few months. I know there's so much guidance out there. Even the Prime Minister yesterday admitted that it is getting really, really confusing. There's a lot of unknowns circulating. For those of you that are based in Wales, it is also different. Today's presentation is mainly talking about English guidance. For anybody in Wales, I'm going to contact you and we will speak as and when visits happen. It is applicable to those of you in England working with Welsh schools as well. So generally, the standard guidance for everybody out there is that the current government guidance says regarding educational visits, they can resume from the autumn term, which is this term, non-overnight domestic educational visits, providing that there are COVID secure measures in place at the destination. We'll keep an eye on this and we will let coordinators know if anything changes. And also just to clarify, as of the announcement in England yesterday, with the rule of 6, schools are exempt from the rule of 6. So it does not prevent a group, a school class coming out on a visit at the moment. Could we have the next slide, James, please? Thank you. So what does this mean to us, which is the question we're all asking? So we can resume farm visits. We can resume them this term now, providing that everybody's happy to do so. COVID secure measures, it's a word, it's a statement. In reality, what does it mean? It means that we need to have pre-visit discussions with the school, with the host, and with your coordinator. And subject to this discussion, you may have to do a number of different things. That could include social distancing during your visit. And as David said, there's the school bubble, there's yourself, and there's the country trust coordinators. So the 3 things have to be socially distanced. Activities might need to be revised to meet any guidance. We may need some additional hand washing in place, or there may be opportunities where we might need to use sanitizer during the visit. And we are going to have to introduce cleaning regimes and agreed cleaning regimes for lunch and toilet areas. You will need to update this on your risk assessment, and we have updated risk assessments for our coordinators and activities that we lead. So I'm going to talk a bit more in detail in my next presentation, but for now, it's really exciting that we've got the go-ahead to welcome back some of these happy faces on here that we've missed so much over the last 6 months back onto the farms. On my next slide, I have put up a couple of links. If you do want to read the educational guidance to see what schools are allowed to do, this is the information. However, local authorities have also got another layer of information and guidance between this and the schools are all interpreting slightly different, which is why our conversations with the teachers are very, very important. We are going to share these links after the presentation, and Claudia's going to be putting them in the chat now, so we can speak a little bit more. Hopefully as well, you can have a chat to your coordinators and get very specific site guidance. So thank you, Claudia, and back to you, Sue. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. So we'll come back to Mary in a few moments. During lockdown, one thing is absolutely clear, that children have suffered. And the children that we work with, the vulnerable and the more disadvantaged, disproportionately so. I'd now like to introduce a very a very renowned author and educational expert, Alistair Bryce-Clegg, who joins us today live and will be able to answer your questions too. And he's going to give us an insight into the current mood in schools at the moment and what kind of needs teachers and their children will have on their return to school this week. So I'd like to introduce now Alistair Bryce-Clegg.
Hi, thanks Sue. I'm really pleased to be invited along by the Country Trust to talk to you today about education and a return to farm visits in this time of COVID. I've been involved in education now for getting on for 30 years, which feels like a very long time. And this is a really unique time in our education, the most unique time I've seen. And I think I'll echo what all the speakers have said so far, in that the children that we work with and the children that you welcome onto your farms are the children that really need this kind of experience, because it's not just something different to do in their day. I know from my experience, both as a teacher, a head teacher, a parent, and now as an education consultant, that these visits are transformational for a lot of these children. And also we know that during lockdown, a lot of children didn't get access to even a lot of open outdoor space, never mind something like a farm visit. And even now that outdoor space is restricted for lots of them. So the opportunity to be able to visit a setting like yours and experience something for them which is completely different is, as I said, really transformational. I kind of echo what Jill said in her presentation, that it's about us supporting children to learn and grow and thrive being the really important word, because we want our children to thrive in their learning environment. We want them to really enjoy the learning experience, but we also want them to be really well-rounded adults in society. And lots of powerful experiences like the ones that you can offer are crucial in terms of building that skill set for those children. I kind of feel very passionate about it because I was born and brought up in the northeast of England, although the accent might not show it now. My dad was forever telling me once I moved to Manchester that my accent had disappeared and I needed to speak like a proper Geordie, so I'll do my best. But I, with my brother, was sent out rambling, and it's like the stories of old. And I speak to my 3 teenage boys now about me and your Uncle Gareth used to go out in the morning up to Granty's Pond and catch newts in a jam jar. They look at me like I'm literally 200. But that was what my youth was all about. It was about being, in a fairly rural setting in a mining village where nature was part of what we did. And we learned so much about our world and the world in which we inhabit and the weather and the seasons just by being in spaces. And then when I became a teacher, I came to Manchester and I taught in inner city Manchester. And it was like a different world to the one that I grew up in. But also the children's experiences were so far removed from the ones that I've had. And I remember, and some of you will know this, especially if you've got early years children who come and visit, there is a lovely song that's sung this time of year in early years settings across the world, and it's called Paint Box, but often known better as Cauliflower's Fluffy. And it describes all of the lovely kind of harvest fruit and veg that children should come into contact with. So you've got your cauliflowers fluffy and your cabbages green and your broad beans sleeping in a blankety bed. And I remember singing this with children and loving it, and they loved the song. But I remember once saying to a group of children, I love cauliflower, how about you? And the majority of them couldn't tell me what a cauliflower was. So they'd never actually seen or tasted a cauliflower. The chances of them knowing about a broad bean that's sleeping in a blankety bed are really far removed from their day-to-day experience. And also classically, once talking to children about eggs and hatching eggs, and getting the incubator into school and asking the question, where do eggs come from? And the response straight away was Tesco. Nobody said, oh, chicken, the life cycle of a hen and blah, blah, blah. For those children, they firmly believed that eggs came from Tesco because they'd never really had any interaction with a chicken other than a storybook. So when you are inviting children to your space, be it the different types of farm that you've got and the different sort of experience you can offer, you are teaching life skills to these children, and life skills that are really important to give them what we want them to have in terms of their engagement in society. And I know from the schools that I'm currently working with that staff are keen for children to get back into school. They're keen to get that social, emotional building going on, but there's also a big culture of catch up. So there is a pressure on schools to get children back to that academic study, and too much of a focus, in my opinion, around just the literacy and numeracy element of learning, because that's not what makes a whole child. We talk in education about the characteristics of effective learning. And these characteristics are about the fundamental things that good learning should be. So we talk about children being able to have a playful learning experience, and also an experience where they can explore and investigate the environment in which they inhabit. And of course, both of those things you can offer on your farm visit. We talk about it being essential that children are active learners. Now, an active learner is somebody who takes part in their learning process. So they're not just told, it's not just learning by rote, it's not just doing a worksheet, it's having a physical involvement, a cognitive involvement in what you are learning. And again, that's exactly the sort of thing that you offer. And the third characteristic that makes an effective learner is a child who gets the opportunity to be a creative and critical thinker. And you can only be a creative thinker if you have opportunities to think creatively. So you have an imagination and you have a wealth of experience that you can draw on to help with your thinking. And a critical thinker is a problem solver. And so you can only become a critical thinker if you're given opportunities to solve problems, but also a variety of tools to solve those problems with. And they don't just come from literacy, numeracy, and worksheets. They come from real life lived experience. So much so that when I became a head teacher of a large school in Manchester, we made the investment to buy in a Cooney piglet called Tilly, who grew up to be a very big, much bigger than I expected, Cooney pig. And then we got in Dolly the goat to give her a bit of company. And eventually we ended up with a raft of chickens and a cockerel called Bill, who annoyed the neighbours on a fairly regular basis, who fertilised the eggs. And of course, our children then got to see hens sit on eggs and the eggs hatch. Simple things, but they made a massive difference. And all positive, other than maybe explaining what Chico was doing when he was actually fertilizing the hens to create the eggs. I think some of my midday assistants, or dinner ladies as we used to know them, had a couple of awkward conversations with children over a lunchtime period. But that withstanding, and they are life lessons, it was a really valuable experience. So what I would say to you from my point of view is, yes, we were all a little bit uncertain about COVID. We're all a little bit uncertain about how quickly the rules can change, as Sue has said. But I know that schools' primary concerns are safeguarding and keeping their pupils safe. So whereas David's talked a lot about the really useful risk assessment that's in place, schools will be on it. And the staff that I know are working tirelessly to focus and revise their health and safety and their risk assessment. And certainly on something like a school visit or a trip to a farm, that would be done in triplicate. So be reassured that the schools you're working with will be working hard, but always useful to have that conversation. But fundamentally, I need to go back to kind of what I said at the beginning, which is what you do on a day-to-day basis is normal to you because you do it all the time. But when you can offer what you do to children whose experience is otherworldly from the one that you live in, there will be transformational experiences that will impact significantly on children's learning, not just now, but their future learning, as they move on into adulthood. So from me, from an educational point of view, thank you if you're already offering these visits, but also if you're thinking about it, then please do think long and hard, because you will make a significant difference. Thank you.
Alistair, thank you. That was really valuable and a brilliant insight into the world of education. So we have heard lots of information now from our different speakers, from Alistair. We've had industry support from Mark Bridgeman, and we've had our own internal health and safety discussions. So I'm now going to go back to Mary, who's going to draw together some of these threads. And in a summary, she's going to be able to explore how we can adapt the knowledge that we've gained here into some practical adaptations for the activities we would do on farm visits, and to give us a bit of an overview. When Mary's finished speaking, we're going to go into our 5-minute question and answer session. So please bear with us. And for now, I'm going to hand back over to Mary.
Thanks, Sue. You see me. So, as I've said before, I deliver farm visits. From what we've seen of the children coming back to school, there's been a lot of anxiety. The children, the teachers, the parents. But once they've returned, there is quite a collective sigh of relief as people get used to the new normal. So I'm hoping to give you some understanding of what we think the new normal could look like during a farm visit. We don't have all the answers yet. It is going to be a learning curve for every single one of us, but we're going to work with hosts, with teachers, with the children to support you to provide the best and safest visits that we can. We're a learning organisation, so I can guarantee that we'll continuously review visits as they happen, starting with the one next week, and we will ensure that our coordinators are kept involved as we learn, and they can forward this on to you. If we can put the presentation up, James, thank you. Brilliant. Can we go to the next slide? Brilliant. So, as I've said in my previous slot, the government guidance is that visits can go ahead. However, we are only going to do this if all parties, the school, staff, the children, the farm host, the country trust coordinators and any volunteers are satisfied that the risk from COVID from everybody to everybody attending the visit is acceptable. So we will have those discussions before we're getting you to agree to doing a visit. And if at any time before the visit or during the visit we feel it's unsafe to continue, then the visit will either be postponed or will be cancelled. It could be something like a local lockdown. At the moment, in local lockdowns in the northwest, schools are still in though. It might be somebody who's got illness, whether it's the farm or with the school. So we will remain in communication with you. Okay, next slide. So how are we actually going to do this? So your coordinator is going to always be your first and main point of contact. They will be aware of any local lockdowns and they will check that nobody's displaying any COVID-related symptoms before the visit. They'll be on hand through the visit as always, and they can go through the visit with you step by step. As I've said, each school has their own different interpretation, and they know the children and how the children are reacting to this new normal and in different environments, and we will look to the teachers for this guidance. So this is why pre-visits are important. Pre-visits are now mandatory for every single visit that you do. We feel it's essential for you as a host, us as a coordinator, to sit down with the teacher on the farm and to go through every single thing that's going to happen on the visit. So this might be hand washing. Our guidance is still the same. Everyone must wash their hands with running water, ideally warm, liquid soap, and they must dry hands using a disposable paper towel. We're good at this. We know what to do. However, we might need to increase the frequency, and it will be determined at the pre-visit depending on what they do in school. They've all got their routines, and we will follow those. We need to social distance during all activities. That's really important. So it might be that we need to train up the teachers to do things during the visits that we would normally do yourselves or us as coordinators. And we need to talk about those. It's likely the teacher's going to lead on the hand washing and the boot washing rather than ourselves. But all decisions will be made with you and your coordinator and the teacher. And again, lunchtime, we need to talk about cleaning down. We need to talk about, do we go in the lunchrooms? Do the children have exclusive use of toilets? And again, face coverings. But with face coverings, we do also need to be very, very aware that some face coverings might be a barrier to children with additional needs. So if there's children that might need to lip read or children with autism, we need to have this discussion with the teacher, and this is why pre-visit is so important. So if we look at the next slide, I've put up a couple of pictures of different activities that may or may not be happening on your farm, just to understand how we might do things differently. So the first one here is the children using a grain mill. So it's likely that the farmer or the coordinator might set that up, but then the teacher will know how to use it. We'll have to disinfect it, step back, and then we'll allow the teacher to operate it and use it and talk to the children during it, keep an eye on their health and safety, and rebuild them as and when they need it. Another activity that I use on a lot of my visits, quite often a farmer or myself will hold a chicken, we'll take it round the children so they're able to stroke it. That's going to be hard now because we need to still social distance. But there are ways that we could do it. It could be that we put the chicken in the pen beforehand and the teacher picks it up, or the pen's accessible for the children to get to. It's not saying we can't do things, it's just looking at ways around doing things so children can still have fun. There's a machine demonstration here. They're brilliant things to do that mean that we can still social distance if it's relevant and show the children what happens on the farm. We do need to consider the age of the children when we're adapting these activities. For the little children, the farmer holding the chicken and keeping it controlled might be a good way for the children to engage. If the teacher's not confident, it might be that that's not suitable. But it is step by step, we'll go through everything. So as I've said, I'm not asking you to stop doing the fun stuff, because that will be boring and it would be completely against all our aims and values of a farm visit. We want children to have hands-on experiences. But just with a little bit of thought, there are numerous things that you can do that will still make the visit engaging, interesting, and it will allow you to maintain your social distance. So, my next slide, please, James. I want to be really clear to reassure you, visits will not go ahead if anyone involved shows any of the 3 COVID symptoms. So the high temperature, continuous cough, or loss of taste and smell. Maintaining everyone's health and allowing your business to continue to operate is so important to us, and we would never ever jeopardise that. The Country Trust coordinator is going to be ringing everybody the day before the visit to check that everybody's okay and symptom free. We're also going to be talking to yourselves on arrival on the farm before the children arrive, and also we will talk to the teacher on the bus steps before the children get off. We do have to accept that things are going to happen. We all know the lack of control. Things are going to happen outside our control, and we are going to have to be flexible. Local lockdowns, changes to rules. If one child in a school gets it, it might be that that class has to self-isolate. We're going to watch it closely. We're going to understand what happens, but we need you and us to remain flexible throughout the whole process. This way we can ensure that we protect everyone and keep our visits safe. So my final slide. In summary, we are so used to maintaining good hygiene on our visits. Our visits are outdoors, so the risk is a lot lower. It is possible for farmers and coordinators to social distance from the children. We just need to make sure it is all documented in your risk assessment. We've said time and time again that we need to continue to make sure our visits are safe, but I really believe it's important our visits continue to be really engaging and fun, to give these children, the ones that have actually missed out so much during lockdown, the best experience that we can. Transformative experience, I think, were Alistair's words. So thank you all so much for hosting visits, supporting all our children. We really truly appreciate it. I look forward to hearing more about visits in the future. If you do have any questions, please do ask them next in the chat to myself, or ask them to your coordinators. This link here is a link to our health and safety advice on our website. Claudia is going to be posting it. We will update it as and when it's needed. So thank you all so much. I'll be keeping a really good eye on what's going on across the whole country. I'll be hearing the stories from the coordinators, as I love to hear, and seeing the photos. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll pass it back to Sue, and I can see lots of questions have popped in, so we'll start to answer some of your questions now.
Thank you, Mary. Great summary. So there are some questions that have popped up. So I'm going to start them from the in chronological order. The first one is directed towards David, and it's from Tango Fawcett. So Tango has asked, if it's what she should use to disinfect her school area that she has, and would a generic disinfectant purchased from the supermarket be sufficient, or do you have some other advice on other products and where could she get them?
We're saying that it should be marked antiviral and effective against COVID-19. There are products out there online and in shops, but if people just can't find them, contact the coordinator.
Thank you, David. So yes, we'll keep you posted if we have any excellent advice on that too. Can I just say as well that there may be questions for David, as I mentioned before, that he might take a cautious approach over. We might come back to you later. We are going to post a link to this video when it's recorded, and we might at that point put the answers to any questions that we've not been able to answer at this moment with that too. So our next question, this is for Jill, and it comes from Mark Coleman. Thank you, Mark, for posting this. I would like to get involved with climate change visits. Who should I contact?
Thanks for that question. We have an email box that's the one to let us know your interest through, and it's info@countrytrust.org.uk, and I think Claudia has posted that, but it's also the way to contact us through our website. It will come into that inbox and we'll find it. We have at the moment only got funding for 20 visits, and we think they'll take place in 2021. So it won't be a big opportunity. We'll just need a small number of hosts who are really doing great things on their farms to demonstrate this work to mitigate climate change. We're hoping it will grow because we think it's a really relevant subject and a way children can learn an awful lot. But if you are interested, if you've got things going on your farm that you'd like to show off, then please do contact us through info@countrytrust.org.uk. Thank
you, Jill. This question is for Alistair. It was posed in advance. Alistair, do you think that very young children in early years get as much from a farm visit as, for example, Key Stage 2 children?
Yes, absolutely. I think you could visit a farm every day for a year and get something different from it. So I think early years children at the very beginning of that learning journey are getting some of the kind of new and unfamiliar experiences. But then if you are looking at a Key Stage 2 child who's been maybe on a farm visit before or got different sorts of life experiences, then they're going to get something equally as valuable but different. And obviously the curriculum supports both the early years foundation stage and knowledge and understanding of the world, as well as all the aspects of the national curriculum that link into kind of farm visits and farm study. So yes, absolutely.
Thanks, Alistair. Now I can see quite a lot of other questions coming through, so I am conscious of time and I want to be able to move on to our next stage now, but I will back to those at the end, and some of them are very interesting questions and I'd like a few moments to consider them as well. So for the next part of our webinar, we're going to move on to the new concept that Jill mentioned in her speech about Farm in a Box. Katie Watts and Sally Hetherington-Aherne have worked very hard to develop this project, and you're now going to see Sally speaking. So I'd like to hand over to Sally to tell us a little bit more about this exciting new project.
Hello, my name's Sally and I work for the Country Trust as a Food and Farm Discovery Coordinator in the Eastern region. I'm here today to outline Farm in a Box, and I'm really excited because we're launching it this week, and you are essential to Farm in a Box going forward. So what is Farm in a Box? Farm in a Box is essentially a farm-centred experience within the school delivered by the teachers. But crucially, it's working with you as our hosts and the coordinators arranging it all with you. The Farm in a Box will arrive at the school as a box, and inside the box will be a selection of different activities. And this will be worked up with the teacher and yourselves beforehand. Inside the box, we will also have some items, and the items will be hopefully gathered from your farm in correspondence with you, and they will depend on the activities that are chosen. So it will really vary because all of the menus that we've got correspond with different farms. And our farms, the activities within the farms will cover arable, dairy, beef, sheep, seeds we eat, so that's arable, I've already mentioned, and vegetables. So we will also be asking you for items, and they can be as varied as it might be some wool, it might be soil, it may even be a pair of farmers' underpants for our soil tests, but we want them new and packaged, please. But there'll also be a film, and your coordinator will work with you to do a short introductory film to outline a little bit more about the farm itself, and also to introduce you to the children, because crucially what we'd like to do is to follow that up with a farm visit later in the year if the school aren't able to get out to you straight away. You don't have to be Matt Baker, so don't worry, all our farmer coordinators have been working over the summer to do some film training. So it may be just a little bit at the beginning, and then we'll be filming your farm as part of it. But we really hope that you'll get involved in it. The pupils that we work with have been at the centre of developing Farm in the Box, and we surveyed 45 teachers, and we trialled Farm in a Box with 2 different schools as well. What came back as priorities for the teachers was maths and literacy, but actually it was that focus on emotional well-being for their return in September, and looking also at communication and language were really important. So all of that has been woven into the activities that we've developed. What pupils really appreciated, though, from the trials was that personal connection with you as the host farmers. That was so important. So that's why it's important that we see you and you're part of the film, and that context with the farmer is absolutely crucial, because we are looking for most of these Farm in the Boxes to translate into a later farm visit on your farm, and it's about developing those relationships before that happens, and having an amazing time when they come out to see you at a later date. So your coordinator is going to be the person that you will need to connect with. They're speaking to the schools in your area at the moment. In the first couple of weeks, obviously the schools will need to be looking at getting back to normal, but they'll be contacting you, hopefully. The demand will be driven by what the schools will want to do. So for some, they will want to come out on farm visits, hopefully this term and next. For some, they may want to do Farm in the Box and then come out at a later stage. So your coordinator will be contacting you, and they will be working with you, and they will take it from this point. If you have got any questions, please do post them for our webinar now, and hopefully I'll be able to answer those. And if not, you can contact your local coordinator, or do email us or phone us at the Country Trust. Okay. Really lovely to introduce you to Farm in a Box, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you to all of the coordinators who've been involved in that project. I think it's going to be really popular with teachers, and the children will love it as well. So thank you, John. We have heard all of our speakers now, and we're going to go back to having some questions. You may have noticed that a poll has appeared on screen. If you'd be so kind as to click your buttons in front of you, and we'll reveal the results of that shortly. So let me just refer back to the questions that we've received. The first one comes through, and I'm going to direct this towards Mary, and it's from Alice Pawsey. Alice, thank you for your excellent questions and your engagement this morning. The first one is it all right for children to put their hands into grain piles? And they absolutely love it, but would the virus stay on grains, and is that a safe thing to do?
Hi everyone, hi Alice. Yeah, we've had this discussion today, this week actually. Grain piles is something that is such a good sensory activity for children, and you need to talk to the teacher during the pre-visit about this. Essentially, I think, and we've spoken with David, yes, you can touch the grain piles. The children are in their bubble together, that's okay. However, when they've touched grain, it might be that you put it in a bucket rather than the grain pile, then that will need to be put to one side for 3 days just to ensure the quarantine of it. So yes, I think there's ways that we can do it. It might be that it's in the bucket rather than your whole grain pile if you've got different visits coming or different people handling the grain. But yeah, I would hate to lose an experience like that for children. But really speak to the teachers, see how they feel with doing it and suggest the alternatives, and I'm sure you'll find a way around it.
Thank you, Mary. In the same thread, Alice also asked the question about some vulnerable staff members that work on her farm, and she wonders how can we help them feel safe? And again, I think you might be able to answer this too.
Yeah, it's a case of, do your vulnerable staff need to be involved in the visit? Or are there ways they can be involved, perhaps doing a machine demonstration or something from afar that keeps them at a bigger distance so they don't have to be engaged? Without knowing specifics on farms, this is probably something you'll need to talk through with the coordinator, and how they're involved with the visit. We need to have a look at that, but there could be different ways that they're involved, but I wouldn't want somebody that is particularly vulnerable to feel that they had to be directly involved with the children at the moment.
Thank you, Mary. I hope that answered your question, Alice. We'll come back to you because I think there was something else that you wanted to know as well. I'm going to combine a question here. This has come through in advance. I'm going to pose this to Jill, and it is regarding payments for educational visits. And we have a question here, and it says, are there any payments available through Natural England for the time of work that we put into farm in a box days? So Jill, is there anything at the moment on that?
Yeah, I've been talking with Natural England about this actually, and I think there are some technicalities, but it is essential that if you're an agreement holder, that you contact your RPA to discuss your situation. Now, I understand that countryside stewardship agreements say it must be a school visit, whereas just for no particular reason, I think the high-level stewardship agreements say it should be a farm visit, and that gives a bit of wriggle room. Now, these are all audited things, which is why they're so focused on the wording. But if you contact your RPA, look at what your agreement says. There have been precedents set for payments for outreach visits, although the RPA is now saying that they're not so keen on outreach. They think there might be some flexibility around COVID. They think there might be more flexibility for what they might call a virtual tour, which is more what Farm in a Box is offering rather than you going into the school. If you have your chat with your RPA, there's a form called an MTA that you're probably familiar with that you fill in wherever there are changes that you're proposing. We're producing some standard wording about the Farm in a Box product, which we will send round as part of the follow-up to this webinar, so that you can access that and use it if you'd like to on your MTA. I did ask about lead-in times as well, and I understand that MTAs are usually time critical, so they should be fairly swift on responding, but there wasn't a huge amount of confidence on that, I have to say. So I'm really sorry, it is down to individual farmers to contact their RPA, but we can support on the wording for an MTA.
Thank you, Jill. A lot of acronyms there. So I'd like to go back to Alice's question now, and I'm going to refer to Mary on this as well. Alice has asked, are the ratios of staff to children the same as they were, or have they changed in recent times? And also, is it possible for school teachers to self-lead more on farm visits in future? So I'm going to pass that over to Mary now for your response to that.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the ratios. We'll have to look that up and I guess speak to every single school. I don't believe that ratios have changed that I've heard of, but I wouldn't want to say definitively. Yes, I think that teachers are going to have to self-lead a little bit more. However, I would never want a farm visit without the farmer present, particularly with his animals there. So we do have some red lines of no, that can't happen without the farmer. But there are times where the coordinator will lead a little bit more on some visits if it's in a field or doing a nature hunt. So again, speak to your coordinator. We'll need to ensure that everything is obviously properly risk assessed. But yes, teachers are going to have to lead with some things, particularly when social distancing is involved. But speak to the teacher, speak to your coordinator and talk about your very, very specific circumstance, and we'll get back to it. I don't know if David, you want to add something to that?
Just that maybe the teacher might not actually need to lead the children away. It might just be to operate a small piece of machinery or an activity. The farmer can still be nearby, but might not be able to actively lead it.
Thank you, both of you. I'm conscious that I've just seen the clock tick past noon. If any of our attendees need to go at this point, may I just say a very big thank you for attending, and that we will be posting the recording of this video available on our website and on our YouTube channel. If any of you can stay, we'll continue with some more questions, and we're here as long as you'd like us to be. This question I'm going to pose to Sally now, and there's two threads to it. The first part comes from Caroline Dacuna, so thank you very much. And she has asked how they can get involved in Farm in a Box. And I have another question which says, during the pilot scheme, how did teachers feel about presenting a farm visit, in inverted commas, when they might not have as much knowledge of agricultural practices themselves? So how can you get involved, and how do teachers feel about it in the pilot? So this one's over to Sally. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Caroline, and for the other question as well. How to get involved? It will be your local coordinator who will know the schools in your area. So they will contact you. Unfortunately, we won't be able to use all of the hosts because it's going to be down to how many visits that they can do later on, because we're hoping that it can translate into visits. So and to ensure that it's cost effective, we need to have sort of 2, 3 or more visits sort of booked in later on. So if your farm is appropriate, we'll be approaching you and connecting you with the schools. I think the second bit was about teachers and them not being experts. We're not expecting them to be experts in farming. All of the activities have been developed with coordinators, and they work across a whole range of different farms. I forgot to mention we do cover fruit as well as part of the menus that we've offered. And they have lots of activities up their sleeves, and they have worked with farmers over several years and have these activities in mind. A lot of our coordinators are also educators. They have educating backgrounds, so they're all accessible, and some of them are accessible for Key Stage 1 and 2. Some of them are more sort of tailored to either or. So I hope that's answered your question.
Thank you very much, Sally. This one I'm going to sort of direct broadly towards David, although I suspect this may be on a case-by-case basis. James Flory, thank you very much, James. James is interested in the safety and procedures regarding trailer rides around the farm. And David, I know you have your own farm trailer, so perhaps this has been in your mind in preparing health and safety risk assessments. So can we ask about whether it's safe to put children on trailer rides?
Yes, I think it would be. Would have to think about sanitising the trailer, the hygiene part of it, but I doubt if there would be any infection on it if it's been stored on the farm for months on end. But after they've been on the trailer, it would have to be disinfected, and also distancing. If the farmer would usually go up onto the trailer, as I do, I get up on the trailer and walk down the length of the trailer and talk about the cows in the field. That might have to change. The farmer might have to stay off the trailer just to get distancing. Face coverings aren't really relevant there. So I would say the quick answer is yes, with some tweaks.
Thank you. I hope so, because it is a really wonderful part of a farm visit for the children to be able to go on a tractor and trailer ride. This question I'm going to direct back to Mary, but David, please feel free to jump in too. This comes from Helen Rhodes. Thank you, Helen. Helen raises the question of 3-day quarantine and the frequency of visits and what length of gap we might put between visits. So to Mary, I guess to summarise, are we spacing out our visits a little bit more at the moment?
So we've spoken about this. I take your point. We did say, would it be better if we did space out visits? However, there's just as much risk that a child could get it at any point, and having the 2-week spacing, the 3-day spacing, doesn't really make that much difference, provided there's hand washing, there's full cleansing and disinfection of surfaces. It's not really going to make a difference unless you space it out over 2 weeks apart, but then somebody could have come into contact. So speak to your teachers, speak to farmers. If you feel more comfortable doing that, then I totally understand. But we've come to the conclusion, I don't think it will make much difference, unless David wants to add something to that.
No, I think that you've covered that, Mary. But I think there's not. You'd have to clean down any equipment and things that you use for lunchtime, like tables and chairs and such like, before every visit, whenever the previous visit has been.
Thank you very much, David. So I'm going to go to a question from Caroline Dacuna at the moment, and this is regarding school transport. I think this may be another Mary or David question, probably Mary, and it's regarding the difficulties that are experienced by schools. Who's going to manage the transport? Because it seems to be a main barrier to get children out on farm visits at the moment. So Mary, can you give us any information about transportation?
Yeah, so I think school visit transport is different to school transport that we're hearing about in the news, because that's the school transport in the news is transporting numerous children from different groups. Where the children are in a bubble within the classroom, then they're in a bubble. So it doesn't matter whether they're on a bus or whether they're in the classroom, provided the bus driver is happy. And again, it brings it down to, is everybody involved in the visit happy and feel that it's appropriate and we're covering all the COVID risk assessments. We need to speak to the teachers, and as and when teachers approach us, we will have a conversation with them and see how they feel. But my gut feeling at the moment is, if they're in a bubble in school, they can be in a bubble on the bus, and that will be absolutely fine, providing it's cleaned down by the bus company.
So I'm going to move on now. Joe Mitchell, I'm seeing your questions, do not worry. Joe's got 3 questions so far, maybe there are more coming through. So Joe has asked, first of all, in terms of activities, Mary, is it okay for children to dig up soil to see what they can find in the soil? Is that a safe activity to do? He then asks whether teachers might bring their own cups and spoons so that they can have refreshments during the day, and if that's considered safe. And again, that might be something that's discussed at the pre-visit, but I'll let Mary answer that one. So if I pass those over to Mary now, and then the second question that Joe has asked, I'm going to redirect in a moment to Sally. So Mary, what do you think about soil and cups?
Soil, absolutely fine, providing that you follow your normal hand hygiene protocols. There's no reason why COVID would be on soil any more than any other surfaces. So yes, please do dig up soil, follow hand hygiene protocols afterwards. Sorry, what was the next question?
It's about cups and spoons for teachers during their...
Yeah, again, I mean, and it brings back to the soil. Without sounding like a broken record, you need to speak to the teacher during the pre-visit. And the same with the soil. A teacher normally might not be happy with digging up soil. And it's about explaining the benefit to the children as well. Cups, spoons, there's no reason why you can't ask them to bring it. I'm sure that they will understand your reasoning for it. But again, please do talk to teachers during the pre-visit and agree. We're currently putting together a form for our coordinators of tick points to go through during a pre-visit. And it might be that you want to add a couple of things of your own that you have just as a memory jog to talk through points during the pre-visit that are specific to your farm.
Thank you very much. We're going to just ask one or two more questions now before we wrap up. And one of Joe's questions, I'm going to sort of direct this to Sally first, and Jill, you may want to add into this. And it's regarding, can we do a live FaceTime or Zoom with children as part of their in-school farm experience?
Hi Joe, it's great to see that you're on this webinar. Yes, if it's possible, absolutely. The Farm in a Box Day is an event in the school, and we'd love it if we could start the day with a live sort of link up with you. If we can't do that, we will have a pre-recorded film. As part of the filming that we'll do beforehand, and we'll definitely make sure that we've done that just in case any live link up doesn't work. But if it's possible, I know that you're busy people, but if it's possible, it would be great for you to start the day and to finish the day as well, if at all possible. If that isn't, if you're off doing other things, all of the activities are about connecting with the farmer. So all of the activities have how to link with the farmer built in them. So hopefully we'll have questions at the end of the day anyway. So if you're able to do a live link, that's great. If not, it would be great if we can pose those questions to you and you can get back either by email or letter or even a live link the next day. That would be fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. There are one or two questions that came through that we don't have time to answer here, but we'll make sure that all of the responses to your questions that you've posed on the Q&A chat session are fully answered and that they're available to you publicly on our website, including the link to this recording. So a huge thank you, first of all, to our panelists and speakers. Now, many of the speakers, including myself, this is the first time we've held a webinar and we are somewhat out of our comfort zone. So I hope you've enjoyed it and that you have, as we hoped, had a bit of a better understanding of the position from health and safety, from teachers and schools. I'd like to make a very, very big thank you to Alistair Bryce-Clegg, who has joined us today and has an excellent range of other material that you have seen in the chat and links to that if you're interested in it. And I'd like to say a big thank you to you all, and I'd like to echo Jill and Mary in saying that without you, our hosts and our supporters, there wouldn't be a Country Trust. So before we go, James had posted up a little poll before asking how you feel now, and we're just gauging your opinions on that. And if you could just put that back, James, I'm not sure if that's possible, just to put the poll back online in case you didn't have an opportunity to respond to it earlier, and we'll let you know what the findings are. And now you're all free to go off and have your lunch, and may you all have a very good day. Thank you so much for attending.